Welcome to my video review of the UMI eMax Mini. I'll show you very briefly what you get included in the box. It's a fairly minimal package for this. We have a UK 3-pin USB charger here. This was included in addition to the Euro 2-pin one here. A basic simple instruction manual just to give you a few pointers, and there is a flat USB charging cable with a micro USB tip and the handset itself. Looking at the bottom, the controls here, you have two of them are illuminated. This has a silver circle section here. That isn't, but it's quite reflective and relatively easy to see. One thing I did note is the back button here is on the left and it's usually on the right for Android handsets, so that takes a bit of getting used to, but it's better than having the buttons put onto the display. At the top we have the speaker, we have a front camera and an LED notification light as well as a sensor. The back panel here is plastic. You get a covering when it's taken out the box just to protect the logo here, and we have a rear 13 megapixel camera on this model. There's also an LED light beneath that. To take off the plastic cover you just pull at the bottom, and you'll see we have a battery here. This is rated to 3050 milliamps an hour, but it's not removable, at least not easily. You'll have to actually unscrew that. It would have perhaps been more sensible to have had a removable and replaceable battery there. We have our two SIM slots here. This takes a micro SIM and a standard SIM, and we have the memory card slot here. Bottom of the handset we have the grills here for the speaker and microphone and the micro USB charging port. On the right hand side we have the power button and the volume controls. At the top we have a 3.5mm jack input there for headphones. Taking a closer look at the display, this is an IPS panel, full HD, so we have a pixel density of well over 400 pixels per inch, and the display is quite impressive. It's perhaps not as bright as some that I've seen, but it's perfectly usable outside. Didn't have too many problems with that, and the viewing angles are excellent on it too. There's no complaints on that side of things, so it's definitely a cut above your normal 5-inch display that you'd see on most phones. Couple of thoughts on the build. I like the back cover, even though it is plastic, it feels quite tactile. It's got a sort of swirly pattern to it, quite fine, so you get a bit of grip. It doesn't feel cheap or flimsy in any way, and although most of the phone is plastic, it does have a sort of metal effect trim around here. There's no creaking or obvious weaknesses with the design. It feels quite solid, and being a 5-inch handset, it's a bit more manageable to some people than a 5.5-inch one. It fits the hand quite nicely too, so there's no real complaints from me regarding the build quality of the phone. It certainly feels nice in the hand, and up to par for a product of this price. What I've done here is just mounted the phone on a tripod with a holder, just to give you an idea of the camera function. You notice when you're in the camera mode you have an automatic contrast focus with the circle here, and that works okay most of the time. Sometimes it can be a little bit on the slow side, and you can position the focus point at different areas if you want. Now if I bring this menu up here, you have a few different modes. There's an auto mode, HDR, pano, manual, time-lapse scanner, and a face beauty mode. Most of those are fairly standard, but the manual mode's actually quite interesting because you click into that and you'll see the adjustments here. We have a manual adjustment for white balance. That's fairly standard. AW being the auto. F isn't an f-stop, the aperture. F is the focus, so you can manually focus, which could be useful at some point. S mode is a shutter speed, so you can pick the shutter speed, and you can manually select the ISO. Ooh. You'll see when you're moving it down, you actually it briefly shows you the ISO value that's set. The only thing that I found with the camera is sometimes the focus misses, perhaps a little bit more than some other phones that I've tried. I also noticed that the auto settings were sometimes set too low an ISO value. That's a fairly common problem that I've seen on camera phones. It's not something which is rare at all. This one was inside with the LED flash, and it actually did a pretty good job on that. The LED flash isn't super powerful, but it's actually a bit better than a lot of phones that I've used. It's not as powerful as the Iron, but it's more powerful than some of the equivalent models that I've checked out. What I did quickly was run through just a few of the standard benchmarks just to see how things stacked up there. So if we go on to the Geekbench, we get a pretty good score actually, 2255. So that's quite a good performance. We've got the Snapdragon 615, that's a mid-level Octacore processor, so that does a reasonably decent job. Some of the 3D tests now, we'll just run through a few of those just to give you an idea. Again, it did pretty well. It did better than some of the other handsets that I've tested. It beat the Qbot X15 for the 3D performance by quite a margin actually, so I don't think there's too much to complain about with the performance, particularly with the 3D performance, and most of the games that I played were running pretty well.
Action!
Hi, I'm You're here on the set of Homeland Season 2. Can't tell you what's going on, but you're gonna love it.
I'm under, Brody. I don't even know what that means. You know something about Walker's death. Okay, let's try that again.
So it's the whole process of like all the puzzle pieces are coming together.
Looking through the settings, it's pretty much standard affair for Android 5.0. You do have a few extras here. There are some gestures, but at the minute there's only 3. You have a double tap to light the screen, incoming call you can turn it over to mute, and alarm you can again turn it over. There is a built-in compass included, and if you have the GPS on, it will also give you the location down here at the bottom. As you can see, that's changing as I turn it around. To calibrate that, you have to shake it in a sort of figure-of-8 fashion to get the initial calibration on the compass, but it's nice to have that. I haven't seen that on too many of the UMI handsets. In terms of the battery life, I thought it was pretty good. It's always hard to estimate how a phone's going to stack up. This does have a fairly large battery capacity in it. On the other hand, you have a really good display and an 8-core processor, so that's going to take a bit of power as well. Generally, I found the battery with really light use, you'll have no trouble getting a couple of days out of it. If you're a heavy user, you'll be looking at something like day and a half maximum. There's so much variation in this, it depends what you do. I mean, if you start gaming on any handset, you're going to kill the battery within easily less than half a day. But for normal use, honestly don't see the battery as a problem. It's one of the stronger points of the phone. I felt for my own personal use, which was quite mixed, the battery life was actually pretty good. One useful feature here is the 5 shortcut icons at the bottom, so they give you quick access to things like a calculator, music, selfie, etc. And you also have on the right here a QR scanner. What I'm doing now is just testing the charging speeds on the eMax Mini, and as you can see I have my USB tester here. No problems at all, it's charging at over 1.2 amps and the battery capacity is down to about 35–40%, so the charging speeds are pretty good on the handset. Summing up for me with the UMI eMax Mini, some of the stronger and weaker points that I found: I like the display, it's excellent, very good resolution, very high density and good viewing angles with nice colours and contrast. The speed and performance of the handset was good, it's quite a nippy handset in use, didn't have any problems, and it did quite well for gaming too. A few weaker points for me would be the lack of removable battery. That seems like an oversight. You have easy access to it at the back here, but you can't change it easily unless you start unscrewing things. I think that's a bit of a shame. It's probably not something which would ruin the experience entirely. I would like to see an update to a more recent version of Android, at least 5.1, and possibly a few fixes, possibly for the camera focus, which could improve that. But in most areas it's actually quite a nice little handset, and if you don't want a larger 5.5-inch phone, this one fits the hand much nicer. It's not too big, it's not too bulky, and it still has a screen which is big enough to work with and has plenty of resolution.